integrated. When I joined, it was integrated, but it hadn't been integrated for a long time. You know what I mean? Before that, they had, you know, they had had black soldiers in you know what I mean, in another place or whatever, but it was integrated when I joined.
Oh.
Okay, after I got out of basic training, then I went to what's called AIT, which is where you learn a lot about what you're going to actually do in the Army. Now, I came in the Army on a contract. I had a contract for my job. I wanted a specific job, and I got a contract for that job. And the job that I wanted, I worked my entire time in the military was spent working on inpatient psychiatry. So I worked inpatient mental health my entire time in the service. And I went from major Army hospital to major Army hospital, but once a year, every year, once a year, we would go out to the field for about 3 weeks or a month, and we were kind of like a MASH unit, you know. We had tents, and we'd be out in the boonies and do the same things that the other soldiers did out in the, you know what I mean, and we did that because, you know, we never knew, you know, it was coming, during this time it was coming down the hatch that we were eventually going to become, in 72, one Army, and then once we became one Army, then there couldn't be a distinction between men and women in the way that they had to be able to do the same things, you know, that the men did. So anyway, we would go out in the field, you sort of a MASH unit, but we were a medical unit out in the field, and we would do that every year, once a year. And the rest of the time, I was in a major Army hospital. Now, in the Army, the job classifications, they have letters and numbers. I was a 91F, and I had a contract. 91F was my job specialty. The name of it was actually called a neuropsychiatric specialist. And a 91F, I had a contract for that particular job, and so they had to give me that job. If they had not given me that job, then I could have said, bye-bye Army, I'm leaving. And they couldn't have done anything about it because I had a contract and they promised me that job. So if they wanted to keep me in the Army, they had to keep me in that job. So that was, you know, something I kind of wanted to tell you. So they sent me for the training for my job to Fort Sam Houston, San Antonio, Texas. And then I left there, and they sent me, for on-the-job training, they sent me to Fort Gordon in Augusta. And I went there, and that was before, now they have a new hospital in Augusta. It's not new anymore, but it was new. They have a hospital, Eisenhower Army Hospital is in Augusta. And, but at that time, they had the old white barrack buildings that they were using as a hospital, and it was all separated. You know, it was separated wooden buildings, those old white wooden buildings, and you would, and it would be like each department that there would be a building for. There would be a building for psychiatry, and a building for orthopedics, and a building for, you know, different specialties. You know, people that had spinal problems or back injuries or whatever. There were different buildings for different, you know, type injuries or whatever. But the interesting thing too is that when I went for on-the-job training in Augusta, it was at Eisenhower that I first saw what they called electroshock treatment. Now, at that time, they didn't have all of the psychiatric medicines that they have today.